T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Coach on Fire Radio.
Moon, moon on the water, I've been taken for your doctor. Moon, moon on the water, lay me down upon your altar.
Hi, you're tuned to Sacred Erotic with Gila Nehemia. I'm really excited. This is my first show, and I know it's going to be totally amazing. I'm here with Michael Brooks, and he's going to do an interview on me. So I'm really excited for you to meet him. Michael?
Well, hello, Gila, and welcome to the Coach on Fire Radio Network with your brand new premiere show, Sacred Erotic. That sounds kind of intriguing and interesting, and I know in just a few minutes we're going to get into that a little bit, but why don't we start, Gila, with you have quite an inspiring and interesting story. So take me on a journey, your journey, if you will, and tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Wow, that's a great way to start. A little bit on memory lane for me. So I guess I'll just do something really more recent. I'm originally from New York, and about 4 years ago, my husband was ill with cancer for a few years, and he passed away. His family came before he passed and asked if me and the kids would like to live here in Israel, be near them, because he has a really large family. They said they'd help me with the children. And it was really kind of a split-minute decision. I had just a few days, and I said, a lot was going on. My whole life was changing before my eyes, even though when people have cancer, these things are happening, but you don't quite realize it. It's still really a shock when they actually pass. And we had been together for quite some time. And I had three young children. So I just, I am a bit of a, what's the word? I like to make decisions on the spur of the moment sometimes. If it just feels right, I just feel it in my body, and I feel it in my intuition. And my intuition said to me, go. So I said, okay, I'm coming. But I did ask my children, and I did tell him actually before he passed that would be a possibility. And they wanted to come. So, we all got on the plane. They had never been on a plane before, so it was a completely new experience for them. They actually never spoke Hebrew. My husband didn't speak any Hebrew to them. I did teach them a few things. So fast forward, a few more years, and now I was working for a high-tech company, and this past few months, about 6 months ago, I left my job. And my kids speak Hebrew fluently now. We've been living in Israel for 4 years, which I really just even can't believe. But in the interim, in that 4-year period, I had this awakening, this sexual, spiritual awakening, which is leading to this show and leading to my business. So my business, I'll just tell you a few words, and we'll get into it more with Michael, but it led me to opening up to be really who authentically I am, and really stepping into my power. So realizing that everything that we have are really gifts, and sometimes we don't see it that way. And that's a little bit about what my show will be about.
Okay. And when we were talking before, I know I apologize, we had some tech issues when we tried to get this off the ground on Wednesday, and we're using that as kind of a dress rehearsal. And I did not ask you this, Gila, in the last rehearsal, for lack of a better word, that we did, but I'm going to ask it here because I think a lot of people can relate to that. You had a tragic death in the loss of your husband, and so sorry for your loss there. And you inspirationally took your children to Israel. How did you get them through the death of their father and all of that change so, abruptly? Quite difficult on a child, I might imagine, yet you did it brilliantly, and I think a lot of people could learn from that. Do you have a comment there?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Yeah, we didn't discuss it last time. And it's so funny that you asked that. I mean, well, not funny, but probably maybe synchronous might be the right word. But today was a day I went to meet some of my children's teachers, and, you know, they had changed schools, but we were just saying like how wonderful my children have been emotionally getting through this experience. How well adjusted they are in the classroom, how many friends they have, you know, and their ability to let their emotions out. And, you know, they applauded me, but I applaud them. You know, we're in this together, you know, as we have always been. So I have to say that my previous husband's family has been a great asset to me. They really were there when I was unable to operate. At first shock, I'm arriving in a new country, and also they are, and all these things are happening that we're not used to, due to the burial and the death and, you know, the Jewish traditions that we didn't really follow much. And so it was really quite a shock. And I guess, and a lot of times, you know, sometimes they would just start crying, you know, out of nowhere, or getting angry, and it's just a lot of emotions. If anyone listening on the line, or Michael yourself, if you've ever experienced any loss when someone dies, whether it was you knew about it or it was sudden, there's a grieving period, and you know, and children handle it differently because sometimes they're not able to articulate their emotions. Even though my kids sometimes would ask or sometimes would say stuff, you know, initially their first reaction, they didn't have a reaction. You know, they weren't crying. They were just like in shock because there were all these people suddenly who they didn't even know talking to them in a language they didn't even know. So everything was very, very. So yeah, if you can imagine, just like, you know, transplanting 4 people in a place, and I'm more familiar, but they were not. So it took some time, you know, and the kids immediately, I think actually after 3 or 4 weeks, we started putting them in school because we didn't want them to sit and wallow in it.
Sure.
And the first few months were very, very hard. I remember my daughter, my youngest, she's 9, but at the time she was like 6 or something like that, maybe 5 turning 6. Yeah, and we put her in, they didn't have like a kindergarten, they have more of like a kind of a nursery area for those kids before 1st grade. And she refused to go. Like I would send her there and she would call me, and sometimes she would escape. Like she would leave. One time she left on her own, which is really, I mean, it was in a very enclosed settlement where our house was confined. But she just walked out. I was just like, and she came to my house. I was like, what are you doing here? And she's like, I don't want to be there anymore. So I left. I was like, oh my God. So, I mean, there were a lot of different situations like that. But, you know, I think the biggest thing I have to say, you know, I can get into all the details, but that's not what what my point is. My point is to say that we transform together. I said a few minutes ago that I went through an awakening, and they awakened with me. If I don't know if anyone can understand what that means, but if anyone's been through any kind of huge change and they came out of it with a light, you know, knowing that they have been enlightened, they know what that feels like. And my kids have been doing it as well. So together with the love that we're just emanating for each other, and the support that they give to me as well as I give to them, I feel like this experience has only strengthened our relationship and only made us more confident within ourselves as well as a unit.
Okay, awesome. I think that's very helpful to the audience, Gila, and so nice to hear that they're adjusting and doing well after such a tragic loss in a brand new country. Along those lines, what kind of specific adjustments did you have to make going from New York to Israel? I know the kids had never been there before. It was their first plane ride and things like that. But let's talk maybe about you. What kind of specific adjustments did you have to make going to an entirely different and unique culture such as Israel is?
Yeah, well, the language obviously was a big thing. I had learned Hebrew, but I didn't. You know, I really didn't speak it well when I first got here, and I'm a little bit better now. But I'm not quite as fluent as I am in English, so that was huge. But again, their father's family was very helpful in that regard, as well as the rules are really completely different. It's more of a socialist type of country. I mean, I wouldn't say it's not like a welfare state like Denmark is, but they do have, in terms of medical treatment as well as schooling, everything is subsidized. So, and the biggest change, I think, and I actually think it's very logical, like the whole country is pretty logically constructed, as well as the language actually is pretty logical as well. But what I have to say was we all have a number, and this is just important because I feel like I used to work in healthcare in the United States, and I worked actually here in healthcare as well in Israel for a little while. And in the United States, it's really hard, because when you go to a hospital, you have a number, but it's not always really associated with Social Security number. They get your Social Security number, but they have something else. The reason why I mention is because in Israel, it's very important. Everybody has their own unique number. And everywhere you go, whether it's the store or the hospital or your bank, everyone identifies you with that number and can pull up your records.
Really?
And it's actually brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant. From a purely logical point of view, it's brilliant.
Very interesting.
So that's been a good change, and actually I don't feel like a number, which is the funny thing. Even though I'm identified with that number, everyone has been, at least to me. I can't say for everybody has this experience, but for me, I really felt that the Israelis are really, really warm.
Great. And yeah, any Israeli I have ever met has been the same way over here. And I would be remiss without asking, because I know a lot of the listening audience would be thinking the same thing, given the news situations over here all the time, and Israel is reported on continually, as you know, in the United States. How do you handle all of the turmoil in that part of the world? Is it as newsworthy over there as it is here, or is it not noticeable? How do you deal with that?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not really a news junkie. I never have been, and I try to stay away from news in general, because it's sometimes not always pleasant, and it makes me feel sad. Right. So, but when we got here, they were in the middle of a situation, and there were sirens going off at certain times. So we did have to be cognizant of where you are, because they do teach you what to do. Either go to like the bomb shelter, or if you can't find one, lie flat on the ground. And it did happen that whole summer that we were here, which was a little bit disturbing. But then it died down. Then we didn't hear much about it, and we did have it recently, maybe once. But I live in the south. I don't live in the center. I don't live near Jerusalem. So I'm not in a really targeted area. So I don't, to be honest with you, I feel really safe. Okay. I've never really felt threatened.
Super. That's absolutely awesome. And why don't we, you have mentioned and alluded to a little bit earlier that you've been in the corporate field and healthcare, and now you're doing your own thing and running your own successful business, helping people all around the world. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so thank you for asking. I am starting a new business to assist people to really get into their own desires, what their desires are. For example, let's say a woman or man. I'm focusing on women, but men I can work with them as well. Let's just say they really have this longing to do a lot of erotic, whatever their erotic dreams are. And, I don't have to get into detail, but they know what they are. And they may or may not have found a partner to do this with, or they're dreaming of somebody and they think it's not possible to meet this fantasy person. What I am proposing, what I'm inviting people to think about is that if they have this fantasy, if they have this dream, or even a dream life, a dream living on a beach or whatever it is that they fancy, It's all possible because these dreams come to you because it's your intuition or your soul telling you this is the thing that you desire, and there's no reason to stop yourself. The only reason we stop ourselves, the only reason we feel something is limited is because society tells us that you can't have that because of X reason. But there is no reason.